Airports were meant to feel neutral. Clean floors, controlled lighting, scripted announcements repeating the same promises of safety and order. Buff neutrality was an illusion, and on this afternoon, it shattered the moment Olia stepped into the security line. She had dressed carefully that morning, not flashy, not loud, a navy blazer over a plain white shirt, jeans that fit but didn't draw attention, hair pulled back neatly. She knew the rules of travel the way some people knew: press shoes off, laptop out, liquids visible, smile polite, voice calm. She had learned long ago that preparation was armor. Still, as she rolled her small suitcase forward, she felt it. The eyes, the pause that lasted half a second longer than necessary, the way the officer's gaze slid over her face, then returned, sharper this time. "Step aside," the officer said. Olia stopped. Around her, the line kept moving. A man in a gray suit walked through the scanner without slowing. A white woman laughed nervously as she struggled with her boots, helped by another officer. Olia stood alone, suddenly aware of how quiet her own breathing sounded. "Is there a problem?" she asked. The officer didn't answer. He gestured again, firmer. "Step aside." She obeyed, wheeling her bag to the marked area near the wall. Her stomach tightened, not with fear of having done something wrong, but with the familiar dread of not knowing how this would unfold. She had been here before, not this airport, not this exact moment, but this feeling, the sense of being singled out, examined, reduced to a possibility of threat. Another officer joined the first, taller, broader, with a jaw set like it had never learned how to relax. He looked at her passport, then at her face, then back at the passport. "Where are you traveling today?" he asked. "Chicago," Olia replied. "For work." "What kind of work?" "I'm a consultant." "For who?" She hesitated, not because she didn't know the answer, but because she knew how quickly confidence could be misread as attitude. "For a healthcare firm." The taller officer snorted quietly. "Ah!" Something in that sound cut deeper than words. Olia felt heat rise in her chest, but she kept her face steady. "Is there a reason I've been stopped?" she asked. The officer leaned closer, lowering his voice, as if sharing a secret. "You're being selected for additional screening?" "Selected how?" she asked. "Because I haven't done anything wrong." His eyes hardened. "What's your tone?" "My tone is calm," Olia said. "I'm just asking a question." That was when the first officer stepped closer, his presence suddenly heavy, crowding her space. "We don't need to justify ourselves to you," he said. "You're not in a position to argue." People were watching now. Not openly, but with the subtle glances people thought were invisible. The kind that flicked away the moment Olia looked up. She felt exposed, pinned in place by a narrative she hadn't chosen. "Please," she said, quieter now. "I just want to understand what's happening." The taller officer sighed exaggeratedly. "You people always say that." The words landed like a slap. Olia froze. "What do you mean, you people?" His mouth twisted. "You know exactly what I mean." Her heart started pounding. She could feel it in her ears, drowning out the hum of the airport. "That's inappropriate," she said, "and it's discriminatory." The officer laughed, a short, sharp sound. "See, always playing the victim." Before she could respond, he reached for her wrist. "What are you doing?" Olia asked, panic threading through her voice. "Resisting," he said loudly, though she hadn't moved. "That's what it looks like." "I'm not resisting," she said, pulling her hand back instinctively. That was all it took. Hands grabbed her arms, twisting them behind her back. The cold snap of metal closed around her wrists, handcuffs too tight, instantly painful. "Stop," she cried. "You're hurting me." "Should have thought of that before causing a scene," the first officer said. "I didn't do anything." Her voice cracked, betraying the fear she had tried so hard to keep buried. People had stopped pretending not to watch. Phones came out, some openly recording, others held discreetly at chest level. Whispers rippled through the terminal like static. Olia's eyes burned, not just from tears, but from the humiliation. The way her body was suddenly no longer her own. The way authority pressed down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. "You're under arrest for disorderly conduct," the taller officer announced. "That's not true," she said. "You insulted me. You profiled me." "Save it," he replied. "You'll get your chance to talk." They marched her toward a side room near the security checkpoint. Each step felt unreal, like she was watching someone else's nightmare. The handcuffs dug into her skin with every movement. Inside the room, the door slammed shut. The noise echoed in the small space, final and unforgiving. "Sit," the officer ordered. Aaliyah sat, her hands still cuffed behind her, shoulders aching from the strain. She stared straight ahead, focusing on the slow rise and fall of her breathing. "You think you're special?" the taller officer said, pacing in front of her. "Do you think the rules don't apply to you?" "I think I deserve to be treated with respect," she said softly. He stopped, looming over her. "Respect is earned." Her eyes lifted to meet his. "I've earned it just by being human." For a moment, something flickered across his face. Not remorse, not understanding, something closer to irritation that she hadn't broken. The first officer shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe we should check the cameras," he muttered. The taller one shot him a look. "For what?" "For protocol," the first officer said. "Just to cover ourselves." Alia's heart skipped. Cameras, evidence, the truth, recorded quietly while lies were spoken loudly. "Yes," she said immediately. "Please check the footage." The taller officer scoffed, but he turned away, pulling out his radio. Run back the last 5 minutes at checkpoint 3. The room felt suspended in time. Aaliyah stared at the wall, its paint chipped and uneven, wondering how many other people had sat here, shaking, angry, powerless, wondering how many stories ended quietly, without witnesses, without accountability. Minutes passed, each one stretched thin. The radio crackled. "We're seeing the interaction now," a voice said. "Stand by." Aaliyah held her breath. The voice returned, slower this time. "She appears compliant." So visible aggression. Audio indicates inappropriate language from Officer Grant. Silence filled the room like a held note. The taller officer's jaw tightened. "That's out of context." "Sir," the voice said carefully, "the language is clear." Aaliyah felt a rush of something she hadn't expected. Not triumph, relief, yes, but also grief. Because it had taken a camera to validate what her own words could not. The first officer avoided her gaze. "We should remove the cuffs." The taller officer hesitated, then stepped forward, unlocking the metal around her wrists. The pain fled as blood rushed back into her hands. "I want an apology," Aaliyah said, her voice steadier than she felt, "and I want a report filed." The officer laughed bitterly. "You're really pushing it." "No," she replied. "I'm standing up." Another voice entered the room as the door opened. Supervisor, older, with tired eyes and a posture that suggested he had seen this kind of thing before. "What's going on?" he asked. The taller officer launched into an explanation, carefully edited, stripped of its uglier parts. Aaliyah listened, then spoke when he finished. "That's not what happened," she said, "and the footage proves it." The supervisor nodded slowly. "I've reviewed it." The room went quiet again. "Officer Grant," the supervisor said, "step outside." The taller officer stiffened. "Sir, outside," the supervisor repeated. When the door closed behind him, the supervisor turned to Aaliyah. "I'm sorry," he said. "This should not have happened." The words were simple, but they mattered. "I want to file a formal complaint," Aaliyah said. "You'll have that right," he replied, "and we'll assist you." As she walked back into the terminal, wrists sore, eyes tired, she felt the weight of what had happened settle over her. She had missed her flight, her plans were in ruins, but something else remained, fragile but real. People looked at her differently now, some with sympathy, some with guilt, a few with quiet respect. A young woman approached her hesitantly. "I recorded everything," she whispered, "in case you need it." Aaliyah nodded, emotion tightening her throat. "Thank you." As she left the airport hours later, the sky outside was dimming, the day slipping toward night. She knew this moment would stay with her, not just as pain, but as proof. Proof that what she felt was real. Proof that silence wasn't the only ending. She straightened her shoulders and kept walking, carrying her story with her, refusing to let it be handcuffed. Aaliyah didn't leave the airport immediately. After the complaint forms, after the supervisor's careful explanations and rehearsed assurances, she found herself sitting alone near a large glass window overlooking the runway. Planes taxied back and forth, massive machines moving with calm certainty. indifferent to the chaos that unfolded inside the terminal. Her hands rested in her lap. Faint red marks still circled her wrists like unwanted bracelets. She rubbed them gently, not because it helped, but because it reminded her this had really happened. That it wasn't something she could dismiss later as an exaggeration or misunderstanding. A man sat a few seats away, pretending to read but glancing at her every few seconds. Finally, he cleared his throat. "I saw what happened," he said quietly. "I'm sorry." Aaliyah looked at him. He seemed genuinely uncomfortable, like someone who had witnessed a crack in a world he believed was solid. "Thank you," she replied. "I wanted to say something earlier," he added, eyes dropping, "but I didn't know how." She nodded. "Most people don't." He sat with that for a moment, then stood and walked away, leaving behind an apology that felt incomplete but sincere. Aaliyah exhaled slowly. Even moments like that were heavy. They carried the burden of what-ifs of all the times people stayed silent. Her phone buzzed. A message from her sister. "Are you okay? You missed your flight." Aaliyah stared at the screen, fingers hovering. "How did you compress something like this into words?" She typed, erased, then typed again. "I'm safe. Something happened at security. I'll explain later." Almost immediately her sister replied, "What kind of something?" Aaliyah closed her eyes briefly. The same kind, she thought. The kind that never seems new, only recycled. "I was detained wrongly. I'm okay now." Three dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. "I'm coming to you. Don't argue." Aaliyah smiled faintly despite everything. She typed back, "You don't need to, I've got this." She put the phone down and leaned her head against the cool glass. Outside, a plane lifted into the air, wheels leaving the ground with ease. For a moment, envy stabbed through her. Not of the destination, but of the simplicity, the permission to just go. An announcement crackled overhead about delayed flights, life continuing. Her thoughts drifted back to the officer's words. "Few people," the phrase echoed, not loud, but persistent, like a drip that refused to stop. It wasn't just an insult, it was a reminder that no matter how carefully she dressed, how professionally she spoke, how small she made herself, someone could still decide she didn't belong. Aaliyah straightened suddenly, anger replacing exhaustion. Belonging was not something she needed permission for. She stood and walked back toward the security area, not to confront anyone, but to retrieve her bag, which had been left behind during the chaos. As she approached, she noticed the first officer, the younger one, standing alone. He stiffened when he saw her. "Ma'am," he said awkwardly. She stopped a few feet away. "Yes, I just wanted to say, what happened wasn't right." She studied his face. He looked conflicted, like someone who had followed rules without questioning where they led. "You stood there," she said calmly. "You heard what he said." "I know," he replied, swallowing. "I should have intervened sooner." "Why didn't you?" she asked, not accusing, just asking. He hesitated. "Because it's easier not to." Her gaze softened, though the truth of his answer stung. "Easier for who?" He didn't respond. She nodded once. "That's the problem." She took her bag from the counter and turned away. She wasn't interested in absolving him. Accountability didn't always look like forgiveness. As she walked, she noticed more people watching her now. Not with suspicion, but recognition. She wondered how many of them would remember this tomorrow. How many would scroll past a similar video online and think, "That's terrible," before moving on. Near the exit, the young woman who had offered her recording earlier approached again. "I sent the video to your phone," she said softly, "and to myself. Just in case." Aaliyah's throat tightened. "Thank you," she said again, this time with more weight behind it. "My mom went through something like this once," the woman added. "Nothing happened to the officer." "I don't want that to happen to you." Aaliyah nodded. "Neither do I." Outside, the evening air was cool against her face. She stood on the curb, watching cars pull up and leave, drivers greeting loved ones, reunions unfolding in quick hugs and laughter. The normalcy felt surreal. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was an unknown number. "Miss Carter, this is Internal Affairs. We'll be following up regarding your complaint." Aaliyah read the message twice. She knew better than to assume justice was guaranteed. Investigations could stall. Consequences could be minimal. But the fact that there would be a follow-up mattered. She typed back, "I'll cooperate fully." She slid her phone into her pocket and let out a long breath. For the first time since the incident began, she felt the faintest sense of control returning. A rideshare pulled up, and she climbed into the back seat. The driver glanced at her in the mirror. "Rough day?" he asked gently. "You could say that," she replied. As the car pulled away from the airport, the terminal lights blurred together, then faded behind them. Aaliyah watched the city unfold outside the window, neon signs flickering on, people moving through their evenings unaware of the small war that had just been fought inside her. Her mind replayed the moment the cuffs closed around her wrists, the fear, the disbelief, but it also replayed the moment they were removed. The quiet power of the truth catching up. She knew this wouldn't be the end. There would be calls, statements, maybe even headlines. Some people would question her version, others would defend the officers. The familiar noise would rise, trying to bury the core of what happened. But she also knew this. She had not been silent. She had not accepted the lie. The car stopped at a red light, and Aaliyah caught her reflection in the window. Her eyes looked tired, but steady. Still hers. She thought of all the people who never got an apology, never saw a supervisor step in, never had footage to back them up. The anger returned, sharper now, but it was accompanied by resolve. This story didn't belong only to her. When she finally arrived home, she dropped her bag by the door and sank onto the couch. The quiet wrapped around her, heavy but welcome. She closed her eyes, letting herself feel everything she had held back: anger, fear, sadness, pride. Tomorrow she would make calls. She would send emails. She would follow through. Tonight, she allowed herself one small moment of stillness. At the airport, another announcement echoed through the terminal, unheard by her now. Another line moved forward. Another person was selected. But somewhere beyond the glass and steel, Aaliyah Carter sat upright, breathing freely, her wrists unbound, her voice intact. And that, she knew, was something no one could take from her again.